Well, it's a joy to be with you, and today we're going to talk about something that I certainly have not perfected, but something that has kind of captured my heart, and that's the element of surrender. As you know, we've been on the journey of centering prayer and how we can be more aligned moment by moment, day by day with the living God. And there's many facets to that. One of them is the element of surrender. And what I find the challenge is, and the thing that has really been working with me, is how much my mind wants the control and thinks I'm giving God control, when really my mind is still fully functional, making the decisions, giving God the credit for the decisions, while I am assuming I'm surrendered or yielded to God. But the mind is such a powerful force. And that's the beauty of centering prayer, is it helps us stop the mind, slow the mind down to where we become attuned, aware of the presence of God in the moment. And so surrender is attached to the concept, the idea of living in the now, living in this moment, and being fully appraised of God's presence in you, around you, and everywhere. And so, as we journey on this, in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 15, it says, "In quietness and in trust shall be your strength." So that quietness is dealing with the mind that is an endless parade of thoughts. And the endless parade of thoughts don't want to stop. And of course, we've encountered that when we've gone into centering prayer. How much the mind is engaged in so many different things to flood ourselves with, that it interferes with that surrender or that attuneness to the living God. And so we want to lock into this for a few minutes. I want to throw some things out for us to consider. Is it possible the high places that the Bible talks about is our mind? Is it possible that the mind is really that place that builds the interference with the attuneness to God? I think in the Old Testament, remember the prophet was hiding in the cave and he was fearful, and God sent an earthquake and he sent a fire and all of these things, and the prophet kept looking for God in all of those things, because that's the sensationalism, or that's what our mind is definitely in line with. And then when everything got silent, there was God. I remember, in pastoring and also just being in regular services, it's an interesting dynamic. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed it through the years. We'll get into this wonderful place of worship, and you're very aware that the holy presence of God is there. And then it goes quiet, and all of a sudden people start clapping, or something starts to take place. It's almost as if there's this uneasiness about silence. And yet, silence is where God lives. God created that. It tells us in Psalms 46 and 10, "Be still and know that I am God." So in being still, we begin to live in the moment. And I think this is the connection I want you to see. When we can learn to surrender, which allows us to live in the moment, we become more keenly aware of the presence of God in us and everywhere else. And it helps us to start living present. The reason I'm saying that is my mind is always thinking forward or backward. That's me. I don't know about anybody else, but my mind is always, what am I going to do later today? What am I doing next week? Or regrets, guilt, whatever over the past. Should have done this. What about that? But living in the moment is what God really intends for you and me to do. Because there we're fully apprised, fully aware. I want to share an experience that I had just a few months ago. I had to go to Austin to visit a spine doctor. So it's about a 2.5 hour drive. So on the way over, I'm listening to some centering prayer teaching, and then I'm locking in and just spending some time with God, trying to surrender. Surrender the day, surrender the moment, to surrender, to be aware of Him. I get to Austin, and I have maybe 20 minutes before I'm supposed to be at the office. I'm not familiar with Austin, so I'm going by my GPS. The GPS, unfortunately, did not have the latest road detours. So I have enough time to get there, maybe 5 minutes to be ahead of time. All of a sudden, I got to take this detour. Now, normally, my mind, my person, I start getting a little anxious. I start, man, I'm going to be late. This is not good. Brand new doctor, can't be late, doesn't look good. So that's my normal MO. Because I had been spending this time and listening to some teaching, all of a sudden that captured the moment and overrode my normal tendency. And I began to realize this was an opportunity to surrender, to trust that God is really in charge. He knows where I need to be. He knows I'm trying to get there. But to really step back and to trust, He's going to take care of everything. That was not easy, but I did it. I said, okay, I'll get there. So I took the detour. Sure enough, I went and zipped right by the exit that I was supposed to take. So I'm flying down the road. Okay, I'm going to turn around. And the interesting thing to me, it was almost like I was watching myself a little. I was still kind of at peace, which surprised me. So I did the detour. I came around, finally get there. I go in, and of course the doctor couldn't see me right then, so I was not late as far as he was aware. So I sat there for a few minutes, and I was very aware of God. I was very keenly attuned that He was there with me, sitting right there in me and with me. Finally, the doctor had me come in. I sat down. And normally what takes about a 30-minute to 60-minute pitch and appeal to get his business, he got a stool, came right up, almost knee to knee with me, and he said, okay, why should I use your service? I shared a few things, about 7 minutes. He said, okay, let's do it. And I left there so aware that as I had been resting or surrendering, missing my turns, surrendering how I thought it should go, God was fully in charge, taking care of everything. And the challenge that I see is we say we trust God, but when it's not going the way we hope it to go, we struggle. Because in my mind, if I surrender, here's what God is going to do. If I yield to God, Here's how he's going to work it out. That really is not surrender. Surrender is taking your expectation, your intention, your hope off of what's going to happen and actually saying to God, I trust you. I trust the outcome of this situation. I have no idea. I mean, I know what I hope will happen, but I surrender to this moment. I surrender everything to you, and I know that you're in charge. I have found that my mind has run the course so many times, and I've given God the credit or blamed God, either however you want to look at it. But in saying that I surrendered, my mind was still engaged in what was going to take place instead of really surrendering and trusting that God actually has everything in hand. I think of Abraham. God said, leave everything you know. Come with me. Wow. He left everything he knew to go to a promised land he never quite got till he died. But he surrendered. I think of Joseph. He had this vision. He had this dream. And the next thing he knows, his brothers turn on him, want to kill him, throw him in a pit, sell him to slave trades. They're taking him off. He stays surrendered. And I know we don't get to read all the pieces in between. The Bible doesn't, read all the in-between spots. But it's obvious his actions had this trust in God, which allowed him to surrender, right? He had this awareness, trust. So even in Potiphar's house, when he lived above reproach, Potiphar's wife lies, he gets thrown in prison, he stays surrendered. Then when he interprets the dreams, they promise, hey, we're going to get you out of here. If what you're telling me is true, I won't forget you. They forgot him. He stayed surrendered. And in that surrender, he became vice president of Egypt and became the key that God used to save his own people. Jesus, of course, the greatest example, he didn't resist. He didn't fight back. He surrendered. And I believe the reason Jesus, as our example, surrendered, he spent this time with God. If you notice in the scripture, he was constantly getting away from the crowd, including disciples, to be alone with God, to meditate, centering prayer, however you, but he was surrendering to the Father. Then he was able to come with that quiet confidence that God is absolutely in charge, even when it doesn't look like it, even when it doesn't feel like it, and certainly when my mind says, I think God's lost. No, we never say God's lost control. That would not be a good thing to say. But our mind thinks it. God, where are you? Are you there? And so Jesus shows us that beautiful attitude of surrender. And in doing so, that trust. That even though it's not turning out the way I anticipate, I expect, I hope, God really is in charge. And he's really at work. And I think this is one of the powerful facets of centering prayer, is it allows our mind to slow down. It allows us to become more in tune with the living God and to even know God is so alive in us at all times. And in the fact that he's alive in us at all times, I'm able to elevate my trust or surrender to the everyday occurrences that don't go the way I want them to go, but to know that God is really in charge. Think of it this way. Silence. When we get up in the morning, place is silent. Noise starts to happen. That doesn't unsettle silence. When the noise goes away, the silence is still there. Never left. Not moved, not bothered. God is in you and I. He's in everyone who's opened themselves to him. He never leaves us. He's there. Our mind puts God out there and says, come. When God came in our lives, he never left. But our mind, unfortunately, keeps dislodging and putting God out there like he's got to come back. He is in us at all times. And so learning to just live in the moment, learning to embrace the surrender, no matter what is happening, God is really on top of it. And my challenge is to trust him and to accept the fact he really is working in and through me. And so the centering prayer has helped me immensely to kind of settle down. Now my mind, last week, after all this time, I get up at 5 in the morning, and I usually stay there till about 6:30, sometimes 7, just sitting there with God. Last week was pure hell. I mean, my mind was a ceaseless, endless stream of activity. And I'm saying, what? After all this time of practicing, what happened here? Did I lose it? And where's those thoughts? Where's that? That's my mind trying to make me believe things that are not true. And so as you drop down and allow this beauty of centering prayer to take place, it gives you the strength and the help to trust, surrender. Kind of the beauty of surrender is it frees you from guilt, frees you from shame, frees you from the what ifs, frees you from expectations. It really frees us just to live in the moment with God. And there's something so rich and powerful about that. I'm just an avid believer of this. I hunger. I just hunger for more of God. I hunger to learn how to surrender more. What I'm sharing with you today, I've certainly not perfected, but I know it's where we're supposed to be. And I know it's a daily deal. What would Paul say? I die daily. It's a daily journey. And I just want to encourage you and myself. The days that are just a struggle, it's okay. It's absolutely okay. Because God is still very much at work in our life, and we're learning how to release and surrender. Think of it this way. Now I'm going to kind of conclude with this. It's almost, I had this awareness of being by a river and stepping into the river. And it's almost like God is saying, just lay in the river and let the river carry you. Whether you're upside down or face down, just let it carry you where it's going, because I'm in the river. I am the river. I'm in you. Trust me. So it's like I just let myself go. And it carried me. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't have to breathe because I was in God's hands. So all the things that the mind fixate on were kind of knocked off. And I found this free place. Not needing to breathe, not needing to do anything, but just to be in his presence, in his charge. And it's an amazing thing. It's not, I don't know how to describe it, but it's very real and it's very available all the time. So we can talk a little bit afterwards, but thank you for hearing my heart and receiving this today. And so let's take 20 minutes and just live in His presence.